Hey folks, so another day down. I think this is day, I'll look it up. I think it's day 17, 16 or 17. Let me see. I think was it Sunday was 2 weeks, so it was 14 days. It's Wednesday, so yeah, day 17. But anyways, I just got home from work. It's about 8:30 p.m. It's been a long day. It's been kind of a weird day, in some sense, because last night I didn't get like what I consider like a whole lot of sleep, but like when I did fall asleep, it was like super deep sleep, and I had some pretty intense dreams. And I got like I think I got maybe like 3.5 hours, but it was pretty deep sleep. And then I had my leftover coffee, and I got up and headed to work, and I got there just like a few minutes late, but it wasn't like a huge amount of time difference or whatever. So I just headed in and got to work, and I interestingly enough, I didn't have that hard time getting through like the first half or so of the day. It was kind of after that, because there was some stuff happened where the machine I was using, some other people needed it, and I kept on having to sort of wait for them to get done with doing what they were doing, and then things kind of dragged it a bit in the afternoon. I took my lunch. I watched some of the Udemy videos for this. It's like a machine learning and data science boot camp with our data science and machine learning with our boot camp course on Udemy, and knocked down some of that stuff. So got through my day, back home. I did have, I think, what I would consider sort of like maybe a little backsliding last night. Just the typical, you go on YouTube and you get kind of bored. And first I was listening to some scary stories, by this one channel where it's like these people write in stories, middle of nowhere horror stories, cryptid sightings, monster encounters, different topics, different subjects, night shift horror stories, people working the graveyard shift or night yard shift, different settings. And I was listening to that, but then it's sort of like maybe it was a bit of sort of the conversation from that from yesterday, where I was talking about that porn actress, going to that political event and yada yada. I didn't look up anything, but it's sort of like the YouTube, and it's kind of like, I guess to a certain extent, it kind of boggles the mind to, maybe to some extent or so, but, they'll have the binaural beats, which, help you get to sleep, that sort of thing. And that stuff's, for the most part, all right. But then they, obviously, like, people being people, stuff verges into sort of, folks trying to induce wet dreams or sex dreams. And, unfortunately, I listened to a little bit of that stuff, but it was weird because, like, it didn't really have, like, the kind of, rousing effect on me, which is why I turned it off and went back to listening to, scary stories. But there was that certain moment there where I was, I literally thought to myself, like, this is weird, just the practice of it, it's kind of almost like a substitute of some sort. And from what I could tell, a lot of the stuff that's more intense, where it's kind of like they're not even trying to pretend like it's a binaural beat or it's something like a sleep aid or whatever, where it's just straight up like, it sounds like audio, through the audio track lifted from a pornographic, movie or film, or it's somebody mimicking, that. And maybe there's like some sort of beat included in that, mixed with that sort of thing. But how they get this stuff on YouTube, how they would get this stuff on Facebook or these other social media platforms that, you know, claim to have issues with, you know, explicit content and whatnot, but not only that, but just more so just the practice of, you know, like kind of like almost like looking at it from the outside in and going like, okay, so let me get this straight. Like you're laying in bed, you're on Nofap, you haven't gone and like straight up relapsed, but you're, you know, kind of like skirt the edge and you're laying there in bed and you're listening to stuff and like, you know, if I close my eyes and try to sort of imagine things, like maybe I'll get a sort of short-term reaction, but like, you know, it doesn't do any of that for me, and it sort of puts me in this like weird state, you know, and leaves me open to like all the you know, effects of like of the process by which I would slip into a relapse, you know. And I stopped doing that, and I went back to the scary stories, and then just to some regular binaural beats, and I fell asleep, and I didn't have a wet dream or, you know, a sex dream or, you know, have pornographic images in my mind. And I woke up strangely refreshed, you know, from the deep sleep that I ended up in. But, you know, it was one of those moments where it's like, okay, you know, like, again, if I continue along this path, like, you know, this will be the start of a relapse. And I put an end to it, but, you know, it wasn't anything, it wasn't anything that required a whole lot of willpower, which, maybe I'm just in a state where I'm tired of that stuff enough, or I have other things going for me or whatever, but I'm just not as susceptible to just going, you know, screw it, let's relapse, you know, that sort of thing. But I was able to sort of undo that sort of trajectory going in that direction. But you know, having covered that, that's not exactly what I wanted to discuss. The thing that I want to talk about was sort of this idea of like hypocrisy, and you know, like the last video, and, you know, Alex left some comments which are, you know, both kind of funny and kind of interesting at the same time, in response to that. But I just had this sort of this thought of like if you've seen pornography, if you have fapped to it, whether you're on Nofap or you're not, or you're you know, struggling with Nofap, or you've relapsed or you haven't relapsed or what have you, like, I mean, I almost wonder if we have sort of the moral high ground to even criticize it. And, you know, like I've talked about, like with regards to that porn actress, like, how did the people who had her, you know, kicked out of the event, how did they, or removed from the event, how did they know who she was, you know? If they knew about her because of some other, you know, thing, like a lot of these, even in some of these more conservative or traditional or conventional, yeah, I should probably use the word conventional, because conservative or even traditional, like, you know, depending upon the context you're looking at it, it can mean so many different things. You know, what is considered conservative or traditional in different cultures varies. But even in some of these more conventional societies, you do have some of these folks who've been involved in the porn industry who are now moving into like mainstream filmmaking, and, you know, it's like that's what people hear about them, and then they go, oh, and it's like, you know, who's this actress or who's this actor, and they look them up, and then it's like maybe it shows up in the Wikipedia article or shows up someplace else, you know, or they just do a Google search, and it's like, you know, you look at the search results and it's like top 10 search results for this actress or this actor. It's like, wait, hold on, what kind of what kind of work have they done? And it's like their first major, you know, mainstream movie that they're working on, that these people are hearing about them from. But oh, you know, the reason they have a quote unquote careers because, their last 5 years they were doing, pornographic films, and then they decided, oh, I'm done with that. That was my porn star phase. Now I want to become some mainstream, actor or actress. But, for I think a lot of us, the reason we would probably know about any of these folks is, sadly because we've watched the content, and that's why we're on Nofap. That's why we know about PMOs. We know why we know about these actresses or actors. And I oftentimes wonder, like, okay, can I criticize that? Because a lot of the stuff, like, I think the effectiveness of it is sort of like, at least in part, if you want to get into sort of condemning things, a lot of it is rooted in whether or not you have sort of the moral high ground. And I try and steer away from that because, like, that gets into, like, ad hominems and so on. And besides, like, I think one of my longest sort of arguments or points I've stuck with so much has been, like, like, why do I do Nofap? Why do I have these times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to push through to 6 months, or I'm going to try and get through to 9 months, so I can get, past my PR, my personal record, or, why am I so adamant on one day eventually reaching a year of Nofap and that sort of thing? Because I've seen the effects on myself, and it hasn't been a moral thing. It hasn't been about, I don't want to objectify the women, or I don't want to be a, scummy, creepy, weird, bad guy. I don't want to be a scummy, creepy, weird, bad guy, and I don't want to, when I say objectify the women, I don't mean like, in the light of, like, some moral sort of issue, but more like in terms of, like, looking at them through a lens that is either too sexualized or too idealized, such that it gets in the way of me interacting with women, and it sort of impacts negatively upon any relationship I might have with a woman. And I'm not talking about, this sort of what they might call, blue pill idealization of women. Oh, I don't want to think of her that way. It's like, if you're in a relationship with a woman, you're probably gonna, I'm not, when I say relationship, I mean like romantic relationship. The likelihood is at some point along there, you're going to be having sexual thoughts about her, and it's not bad. But if it, if the relationship is such that it veers to one extreme or the other, that's dysfunctional, that's not healthy, that sort of thing. You want to have, like, a healthy relationship. But, getting back to, like, I mean, do we have the moral high ground? I mean, I suppose if you abstain from pornography long enough, PMO long enough, that it becomes sort of like part of who you are to not fap, to not watch that kind of thing, I suppose. And I suppose you could still make, a moral or an ethical argument against it, even if you have engaged in the behavior, kind of like an alcoholic or some sort of druggie, or a chain smoker. So, telling people, like, don't get into drinking, don't get into drugs, don't get into smoking, I know I engage in it, do as I say, not as I do, but honestly, don't go down that path because, this is where you'll end up, and it's super hard to get out of it, and it's super destructive, and et cetera, et cetera. I suppose you could still make an argument against it, but, like I remember back in college, there was this guy who, I had problems with personally. A lot of it had to do with the girl I was into. But I remember, and this is kind of almost like incriminating myself. I remember, like, I don't know if I was still friends with him on Facebook, or I just, like, looked at his profile, and or no, I yeah, actually I was still friends with him on Facebook at this point, and I kind of had taken to sort of snooping around on Facebook. You go surf on Facebook, maybe you quote unquote look for friends, or you look at people's profile. They're in your class, and you want to become friends with them, or maybe you are friends with them in real life, so you want to friend them or so. But how to kind of like cycle through a person's friends list, and sort of show like a sort of, let's say, the top, like 9 friends or something like that, on their list. And I remembered looking at his Facebook profile, seeing in that little snapshot with a thumbnail profile photo of this one woman. I looked at it and was like, I've seen her somewhere before. Obviously, I hadn't seen her in a safe for work, clean, context. And I think I'd only run across her, let's just call it her body of work, maybe like in the last so many months before that, the last year or so. And I first looked at her profile and was just like, wait, that's her. That's that one, I'll use the term actress, okay? That one actress, and I went in and asked the guy about it. I was kind of like, sort of a bit confused, but I was kind of like, oh, I think I might know, that girl. And he was like, yeah, I used to hang out with her, we're friends. And she went and decided to, do some pornography, wearing a certain religious garb. And no, it's not the one you probably all know. It's a different one than that. And apparently she got a bunch of flack for doing it, which, I mean, I used to be on the side of the people giving the flack. I'm definitely not on the side of the people who would defend her. I'm just kind of in this sort of like, don't care anymore sort of a thing. Okay, you guys want to fight over that sort of thing. Okay, fine. It's not my cup of tea. I really don't care anymore. But, because I kind of understand that a lot of the reason why, that sort of thing is done by a lot of these women from that background is, just purely for like attention and drama and that sort of thing. Like they can get people all riled up. But yeah, she got a lot of flack for it, and then she decided to like leave from the area that we're in. We were in, living this region, and then like move away from that because she could go someplace else where nobody knew who she was, and she could sort of ensconce herself in a different social circle, that sort of deal. But like if I were to go off on some sort of moral tirade against like that, like would I have that kind of force behind it, or would I think I need to turn the car back on. Light just went off. Let's see if I can get the lights back on. Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit weird sound. Yeah, I might need to get the oil changed or something. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh, I was just wondering, like, would I have this sort of moral force behind my argument? It's sort of like, because the question would come up, well, how do you know about this person? Same thing with, so many other guys out there possibly who have, such a problem with PMO and are on Nofap and take such an issue with it, like, and maybe we would still have the moral force. And what I'm more talking about is people using ad hominems against us, and the people who want to quote unquote fight for the machine, if you will, at any cost, and really don't seem to understand understand or care about the moral dilemma of it all, you know, the destructiveness of it, you know. So I'm sure, like, you know, you could argue that, I mean, and I've seen this in my own life, that how destructive pornography is. But I just kind of like wonder about the moral force behind it. Like, would it exist still if the reason you were so against it was because you'd engaged in it and it had, you know, done all this damage to you, and, you know, you knew about this actress because you'd watched her content, that sort of thing, but then you had sort of turned against that at some point, you know, it's almost like the conundrum of someone who, you know, slept around in their 20s, but now they want to, like, argue against that stuff in their 30s or 40s or 50s, you know. Do their words still have moral weight to them? Do they have even more moral weight because they know viscerally the negatives of such things, you know? That's kind of like what I, you know, really wanted to talk about, and sort of contemplate, if you will, because I think that's one of the points that a lot of people will go after the Nofap community on. You know, they'll be like, well, if you're so against it, you know, why do you watch it? Or why should I listen to you? Because, you know, you guys engage in this kind of stuff. Or, you know, or they, you know, obviously some cases they want to treat it as a joke, but you know, this point is like one where they would attack Nofap based off of, you know, being able to label us as hypocrites for having engaged in that which we now criticize and reject, you know. Though in a lot of cases I'd say, like, it's one thing, especially for, like, those of us who have sadly enough struggled with this sort of stuff for decades. I don't know if you could really hold it against us. I mean, some people would, but maybe I'm trying to, like, deconstruct whatever arguments I think they might put forth. But you know, for a lot of us, this stuff started off when we were like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. You don't know what you're doing. You know, your brain's not really fully formed until you're like 25 or 26. And what was that expression? I don't know if it was Gary Wilson, you know, may he rest in peace, or, you know, who it was, but it was sort of like this expression that, you know, our brains were not ready for this. Our brains are not ready for internet pornography, you know, high-speed internet pornography. And, you know, almost like a lot of us are being thrown into the mix and, you know, left vulnerable to this sort of stuff, taken advantage of, damaged by it. And maybe now that we're a little bit older and a little bit wiser, now we're going like, no, we're not doing this. You know, we're making the conscious decision. And I suppose maybe that's what would give us moral force and make us not hypocrites, and that, you know, once you're aware of the destructiveness of a certain action, or the wrongness of it, if you will, if you then choose to not engage in it, then you have the moral force. But if you choose to continue to engage in it, that's where you lose the moral argument or the moral force. Sort of interesting thing to consider. But anyways, I've rambled on for long enough. It's now about 9 p.m. and you know, I don't know if I've been all over the place. I tried to stay on topic, but anyways, I'll see you folks around. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the likes, the comments, the subscriptions. Thanks for the support. Take care and stay strong. Bye-bye.